For joining us today for our joint Southwest Northern California IAEE Roundtable discussion. We are very excited to announce we've had a tremendous turnout for this session with over 160 attendees, the most we've had for any event, highlighting our members' eagerness to get California back to work. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Landon Shores, a Senior Business Development Manager for Freeman and board member for the Southwest IAEE chapter and chair of our events committee. I'll be your co-moderator for this discussion, along with my friend Sandy Chapin, who chairs the Northern California chapter and helped put this event together. So thank you so much, Sandy, for your assistance. We're thrilled to welcome our panel of experts who are insights on how members can advocate for our industry and return California to live events. I'd like to thank each panel member for lending your valuable time to educate us all, as we know you're extraordinarily busy during this transition time. To get us started, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to give a brief 20 to 30 second introduction, and we'll jump into questions. We'll start with Tommy, and then we'll go to Ellen, Suzanne, Rip, and Mindy. And just so everyone is aware, you will be throughout the entirety of the event, and at the end, we will do a live Q&A through the chat function, which will be monitored by our lovely Lori Jenks. So thank you, Lori, for moderating that for us. So I will pass it over to Tommy. Please give an introduction. Like I said, then we'll go to the remaining panelists of Ellen, Suzanne, Rip, and Mindy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tommy Goodwin. I have the honor of being the vice president of a group called the Exhibitions and Conferences Alliance, which is a brand new organization dedicated to the recovery and the advancement of the live events industry.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ellen Schwartz. I'm the general manager of the Los Angeles Convention Center, and happy to be here today and see lots of familiar names and faces.
Hi, everyone. I'm Suzanne Goodman. Hello from San Francisco, from sunny San Francisco this time. I'm the associate general manager of event operations at the Moscone Center. Glad to be here.
Hi, I'm Rick Ripito. I'm the president and CEO of the San Diego Convention Center and the current chair of the board for the International Association of Venue Managers.
And last but not least, Mindy Abel from Anaheim. I'm out here on the Grand Plaza, soaking in the sunshine from my office. No, it's good to see so many names and faces. I'm with the Convention Center as deputy director and looking forward to our discussion today.
I had to jump on a webinar, so I'm like,
all right.
That's okay.
Just make sure you got everyone muted, please. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for your introductions, and we so appreciate your time. We are absolutely blown away by the caliber of talent that we've got on this roster. As I mentioned, we know you're all extraordinarily. Time is greatly, greatly appreciated. And to kick us off, we will go right to our resident aficionado, Tommy Goodwin, the VP of Government for the Exhibitions and Conference Alliance. So please tell us about EAC. How will it be supporting IAEE members and the industry going?
Great question. And first off, thanks to everybody in the IAEE Southwest chapter and the Northern California chapter for putting on this wonderful event with these tremendous panelists. As for ECA, the Exhibitions and Conferences Alliance is the advocacy organization that's dedicated to the recovery and the advancement of the face-to-face events industry. And for those of you who are familiar with the Go Live Together coalition that has been advocating for release and support on Capitol Hill, think of ECA as the permanent version of that effort. So even after we have all, hopefully and soon, gone live together, ECA will still be a presence here in Washington, D.C., where I am, and nationwide, working every day to make sure that policymakers understand the exhibitions and the events industry, and really working to ensure that our elected officials in California, Nevada, and Arizona, and everywhere else hear about our priorities. So IAEE is one of ECA's founding members, and David Dubois, who I think is with us in the audience here today, is one of ECA's two presidents, along with David Audrain from CISO, and they're my bosses. And along with IAEE, you've got CEER, the Center for Exhibition Industry Research. You've got Destinations International representing the Convention and Visitors Bureau, the Exhibit Designers and Producers Association, Exhibition Services Contractors Association, folks like Freeman, and last but not least, the wonderful International Association of Venue Managers, who represent the folks who run the public assembly venues across the country, including the great Rip Rippletoe, who we're going to hear from in a moment, who's also represents the organization on my board of directors. So you can see, along with IAEE, we've got a great group that represents sort of the richness and diversity of the sector, and we'll be working both today and in the future to make sure that from an advocacy perspective, all of our voices are heard on Capitol Hill and in state houses and city halls across the country.
Awesome, thank you, Tommy. And you mentioned the very diverse that falls underneath that umbrella of ECA. Could you please tell us what are ECA's current priorities in Washington, D.C. and at the city level nationwide?
Yeah. So at ECA, we're working on behalf of all of you and the industry at large in two important ways. First off, we're advocating in cities and states nationwide to support the safe reopening of business events across the country. And I know, just thinking about the folks who are represented here by these two chapters today, things are quite different in different locations, right? A couple of weeks ago, Nevada announced its reopening plans. Arizona's lifted a variety of restrictions a few days ago, and California, unfortunately, isn't quite there yet. And, you know, I know we're expecting to see something later this week, but I'll let the other folks on the panel talk about it. It's probably not going to be enough to get most of our exhibitions and events back to business. So ECA is going to keep working on amplifying all of your voices out there and letting them know that, you know, our industry needs reopening guidance as soon as possible, especially because we've proven that these events can be done safely and well. And for those who haven't seen the video and the case studies from the Orlando fashion events that took place last month down in Orlando, Florida, go take a look at golivetogether.com and look at that documentary and those resources. And it shows that just our industry can put on shows that are great and safe events in controlled environments. So we're working hard on that. And we're also working here in Washington, D.C., where I am, to advance legislation that promotes, you know, the growth and the sustainment of the business events industry, because once things reopen in California, Nevada, and Arizona, you know, we want to make sure that there are mechanisms in place that are going to encourage the participation of those, you know, exhibitions and conferences that we're all involved in, and help jumpstart the industry and, you know, the folks who rely on us and get them back to work. So our number one legislative priority is a bill called the Hospitality and Commerce Job Recovery Act. It's actually from a couple of folks in Nevada, Senator Catherine Cortez Masto and Representative Stephen Horsford. And, you know, the bill, what it proposes to do, among other things, is actually provide the tax credit that's going to help offset the cost of attending or hosting a convention, a business meeting, or a trade show between January 1st, 2022 and the end of 2024. And so from the attendee perspective, you know, you'd be able to, you know, deduct 50% of the qualified participation costs, like registration fees and lodging. And for providers, for the folks, you know, we work with and for and represent and are some ourselves, you know, the credit would be equal to 100% of the qualified restart costs. So things like renovation, remediation, PPE, cleaning, labor to help, you know, mitigate the spread of COVID-19. All of those expenses would be tax deductible and would really help get things back and going. So we're keeping an eye out on those and a couple of other legislative proposals, and, you know, making sure that, you know, we're keeping our eye on getting folks back to work and making sure that when we are all back to work, that we've got the mechanisms in place to bring vendors and attendees back together safely and at scale.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you, Tommy, for that very in-depth explanation. And you mentioned Go Live Together. So my follow-up question is, how can folks get involved with EAC and Go Live Together campaign moving forward?
Sure. Well, first off, for those of you who have been involved in Go Live Together and those of you who have reached out to your elected officials, and I know there are many of you on the call today who have, first off, thank you very much. We appreciate you adding your voice to the chorus and telling your story about the important role that you and your organizations are playing every day, and why, you know, exhibitions really do mean business for their cities, their states, and the country as a whole. So we very much appreciate that. For everyone else who hasn't gotten involved yet, please join the fight going forward. We need your support, we need your voice, we need your advocacy, and this industry needs you now more than ever. So to best get started, please go visit the Go Live Together website. It's golivetogether.com. And if you go to that homepage, you'll see a big button up in the right-hand corner that says Join Us. And if you press that, that way we'll be able to keep you in touch with the latest and greatest with our efforts and let you know, how you can plug in to help your fellow IAEE members and the industry more broadly.
Awesome. And one final question for you, Tommy. What's the plan for the Exhibitions Mean Business fly-in on Capitol Hill this year?
Great question, Landon. Thank you. Well, Like many other professions, the business of lobbying on Capitol Hill has gone fully virtual. So what used to involve trips to Washington, D.C. and walking the halls of Capitol Hill now can be done from the comfort of your own home and office, just like I do every day. So this year, the fly-in, which is actually going to be rebranded the ECA Legislative Action Day, will take place on June 2nd, which is Global Exhibitions Day, but we're going to be doing it this year in a virtual format. And so, you know, while I'll be missing seeing all of you who make the annual trek to Washington, D.C., what I really do like about this format is that it does really allow so many more people to take part in the sessions and meetings with members of Congress. So we'll have more on that in the coming days, so keep an eye out for some communications from Nicole Bowman, who is IAEE's Vice President of Marketing and is the Executive Director of Exhibitions Being Business and does an amazing job with this every year. And she'll have the details on how to sign up and take part, but we very much invite and look forward to having all of you there.
Great. Thank you so much, Tommy. It's awesome to have a DC insider who can give us those legislative insights, because that's where it all starts. So we really appreciate you lending that knowledge to our members here. So thank you once again. And with that, we are going to turn it over to Sandy, who's going to begin the discussion with our convention partners. So Sandy, I will pass over to you and we can get the conversation rolling.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Landon. Okay, so let's start with our first question. In addition to the insightful updates that Tommy provided, what are some signs of optimism that you have experienced for our industry? And let's start with Ellen.
Okay, well, as you noted, California is probably the slowest state to react to this. And all of the convention centers that are on this call, along with others that aren't, banded together, I want to say it was last summer, to try to form a coalition to lobby, to engage with the governor's office to explain to them what our business was and how we needed to have some guidelines for reopening. And, you know, our business isn't one where you say on Tuesday you can open on Friday. It just doesn't work. So, you know, everybody has participated along with our DMO partners to try to keep that going. We've resurrected it most recently and are making yet another push to try to get some reopening guidelines from the governor's office, because in the state of California, it's the state and then each county. And of course, I'm in the largest county in the state, and thankfully, we actually are seeing the numbers are going down. And for the first time, I think since the pandemic began, the very beginning, they reported deaths in under 10. Actually, I think the number yesterday was 7, which is remarkable considering where we were about 60 to 90 days ago. So the numbers are going in the right direction. We probably will move from red to orange within the next week or so. And that will allow for some additional openings. I don't think it's going to give us the indoor large events that we're looking for yet, but it seems we're moving in the right direction and things are looking more positive.
Thank you. And Suzanne, thoughts to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just say San Francisco is moving from, I just heard from whatever we are, orange, I guess, to yellow, they think in the next week or so. And again, it's just seeing the very similar things that Ellen was talking about with numbers just going down and flattening. On our end in San Francisco, we did have an Association of Surgery of the Hand who officially announced, it was in the paper today, we knew, but it was in the paper today that they're officially doing their hybrid event here in September for about 1,500 attendees, which is a little less than half of what their historical numbers are. But, you know, we're just really pleased that our association partners are really affirming that they still want to come and that they still want to hold, you know, they still want to hold live events. So it's looking forward.
That's great news. Great news. Thank you. And Rip, how about you?
Hi, thanks. Yeah, you know, I like to consider myself a realistic optimist, which means I believe a lot of better things are yet to come. Better days are on our way. We still have pain points to get there, but I haven't even had a chance to reach out to my fellow convention center operators, but I was able to get on a call 3 hours ago with a representative from the governor's office who explained to me that the guidance we're going to be getting this week really doesn't apply to us. It's more geared towards outside private events. And that was actually good news because it was very restrictive. So this was more geared towards wedding receptions and gatherings like that. But I also found out that probably by the end of next week, we're going to have a new green tier, and it specifically is going to be adding conventions and trade shows into the guidance. So what we see this week is not for us to panic or to react to, because it would be impossible to open with those guidelines. But what we receive, hopefully within the next 10 to 12 days, is going to at least give us an understanding. And the comment I heard was that we understand and we hear you, and the larger gatherings need to have a path forward. We're trying to finalize this and get it out. So they asked for patience, which I found ironic. So as we continue to move forward, we're going to get more information. I just don't have a clear understanding of what that means or how far it goes, but at least the fact that our voice was heard, and a senior policy member of the state capital and the mayor or the governor's team acknowledged that he understood we needed more information. So I felt better after that call, and that was organized by one of my board members who's on this call as well, Carlos Cotis. So Carlos and I had a great call, and it was something, and I'll quote Carlos, that we've been trying to get for almost a year, to get someone to give us a straight answer. So I used a little bit of my being on the board of IAVM and representing all sectors kind of move with Carlos's support. And we felt okay after the call. Not great, but okay. So we'll see what happens over the next 10 to 12 days, and perhaps we'll get better guidance on what we can and can't do. But I would just encourage you, when you see what's coming out that involves private events, that is not going to be applicable for conventions and trade shows.
Well, great, thank you. And Mindy, your thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts, you know, it's very impactful that, you know, as Rip mentioned, and both Ellen and Suzanne also, that California as a convention entity came together last June to speak with one united voice. And the guidelines that were crafted and the way that we approached this was unifying. It's something that we as siblings, competitors, if you will, have never come together in such a way. We are the first to call each other as a resource. We compete against each other, but believe me, you and me and all of us together, we're in this to get the same results. One of the biggest and brightest outcomes of this was through this whole pandemic, we really relied on data, right? As a country, as a state, as a county, as a city. And what we learned from that was that the California Department of Health, the County Department of Health, and in our case, the City of Anaheim and our Emergency Operations Center became the catalyst for information. So as we navigated through closure to reopening to supporting our community, that really was the catalyst to moving forward. Today we operate in Anaheim as a testing site, and we also now are a super point of distribution for vaccines. And we're working lock stride once again with our county public health agency. And what's vital there as we start to emerge with guidelines is that we will work with the county public health entity to get approvals on the guidelines, to get approvals on the events, to get approvals on the meetings, to move forward in a logical and next step kind of fashion. And we have those alliances in place. I can speak for all of our cities and those on the panel. We're all working on those same efforts so that when we're ready to plan an event, it's getting those approvals on your plan. And I know we're gonna get more into plans as we go through this discussion.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate that. And you touched on this briefly, but we all know the amount of clout and power that the county health officials have. So what efforts have your organizations made, your leadership, to create dialogue with these county health officials? And we'll start again with Ellen.
So we Actually, our VP of events, Carissa Norton, is our point of contact for the county health department. And we, not only do we participate in, they have calls, LA County has calls for large venues, celebrations on a fairly regular basis. But we also have direct dialogue with Emily Beeler, who has been second in charge to Dr. Ferrer, who everybody in Los Angeles knows who she is. And we have sat down with her. We actually took a plan for an event to her back pre-summer, when we thought we might have a fall. We had an event that put together an excellent plan. We worked with them and we presented it to them. They thought the plan looked great. However, we just were not able to go ahead with it because of the numbers. So they have reviewed both our venue reopening plan as well as a projected event plan. And we have an ongoing dialogue.
Okay. Yeah, and just before we go on to Suzanne, it's amazing the naive optimism that we all had at the onset of this and how the finish line and the goal line has continued to be pushed further and further. But now more than ever, I think that we are close to that. So thank you, Ellen, for those insights. And then Suzanne, can you add anything to that?
Yeah, I think, in a lot of ways, as you try and look for some sort of silver linings, I think this has really created a better partnership where we've always had very good partnership with our city administrator, but she has really pushed us forward to give more information to the Department of Public Health here in San Francisco, who I think really just didn't know exactly what we did. And I think also having a vaccination center and having the Department of Public Health folks really come in and see how you set up something like a vaccination center, a small event in its own right, has really helped them to see sort of the value of what we do and really get a better understanding of how that will work, so that when we do have large normal events again, they have a little bit better understanding. And when we walk those plans over to them, they can kind of imagine what that is. We did have very early in the vaccination hub process, a couple of the Department of Public Health people come in, and they had never been in the building, and they were just like wide-eyed and like, oh my gosh, what happens here? So it's been a really good learning experience for them to really see what we do.
Yeah, thanks so much. And to add to that, it is amazing once you reach out and you bring them in just to kind of educate them on what it is that you do, how that creates that spirit of collaboration. And then for moving forward, it just seems like it's a lot easier to have those channels open. So thank you, Suzanne, for that. And Rib, is there anything that you could add to what Suzanne just mentioned?
Yeah, I think one of the things that happens is that, and I know almost everybody on this call, especially on the venue side, and as we have perfected our skill set as venue operators over the years, and in some cases, we focus on larger buildings with national and international business, and even with consumer shows and other kinds of activities, we don't have as much opportunity to bring public or public officials into the building for that educational component. So all of the things we've been doing, every venue, regardless of sector type, but especially our convention center teams, we've been either vaccination centers, we've been homeless shelters. In our case, we are now an emergency intake site for unaccompanied minor girls who are seeking asylum. So all of those things have created this influx of attention from elected officials, from other city and county officials that normally don't get very involved with us because we haven't given them a reason for concern. But then they start to take us for granted over the years. So now with that, what's happened through the pandemic is we've seen, at least in San Diego, and I would suspect everyone on this call who's a venue operator would say the same thing. We've been given a lot more attention from the directors and above at city, county organizations, even the contract administrators for our friends at ASM. I'm sure we're getting a lot more attention than we've had in the past. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard over the past year, you do that? And I was like, well, yeah. And the other side of it, the first big meeting we had happened on a Saturday afternoon at 4 o'clock when we were becoming a shelter. And one of the directors from our city organization apologized to me for having to call us in for a 4 o'clock meeting on a Saturday. And I looked at him and I said, what do you think we do for a living? And, and so I said, if you and the federal government would have meeting planners and venue operators planning the entire response, we'd be done with this by now. So it's been an interesting education. We've gained a lot more respect and stock as venue operators all over the country, not just California. And I think that's one of the benefits of this in a weird way, is that our voice actually has more credibility right now, I think, than it maybe had before.
I love that, Rick, to finding that silver lining, that those conversations that you're having, those relationships that you're building with those county officials will hopefully benefit you in the future if there is any silver lining. So thank you for that perspective. And then last but certainly not least, Mindy, do you have anything to add to the conversation?
I always have something to add for those that know me. So another entity that came into the fold for us was the Orange County Fire Authority. And another thing California is known for is our wildfires and our disaster responses. And this team early on in Orange County was brought to the fold for their response in a disaster. So they became the strategists, if you will, and once on site with us working with testing, they kind of said to us, where have you been all our lives? You're making what we do in a disaster response seem, you do this all the time, so we may be recruited to respond to future entities offsite in the future because of this, but it's been a great, to Rip's point, understanding. They have a better understanding of how we execute and articulate events, how we strategize and work to find solutions. And, they're always quick to respond as well. And now they see that there's these entities that are pulsed and ready to go. Another benefit of this time for us has been aligning with our public health system. So for instance, Hoag Hospital and St. Joseph Hospitals, they responded in presenting safety and testing and bringing another level, another measure of accreditation, if you will, to the process. And as a result of it, we formed an alliance with Hoag Hospitals to help us work through the county to get approvals on our guidelines. So we have a turnkey approach to how we can work with groups just to get the approvals that we need. And that's probably not something we would have sought out, but the idea kind of curated itself in our interactions and working with these health entities. So now we have this value-added service that we can, put into motion once we start to really emerge with more guidelines specific to different meetings, events, whether it's indoor, outdoor, and all of those areas. But those are kind of some of the results of this time and the things and the processes that we've gone through.
Thank you, Mindy, and I appreciate you.
I was going to add to that. I was just going to say, we've like we have not become a vaccination site or a testing site. We were a federal medical station in the beginning, but we've hosted quote unquote events. The Grammys were filmed here at the Los Angeles Convention Center. And in that, that was probably, I would consider it, there were on the peak day, there probably was 450 people here for that event. And we had the health department come down and to check, again, that they were matching the protocols and what they were using the health appendix on filming on location. So we have been doing those kinds of things throughout the pandemic. And part of the biggest thing that we discovered through that was that one of the important things in terms of both the insurance aspect of it and also the health department was our HVAC system and what kind of filters we were using and the outdoor air intake rate into the building. So those were two things that became important through those visits from the health department.
Great, thank you for that addition at the end, Ellen. Appreciate that. I just wanted to say to Mindy, thank you for educating our city and county officials that we're event professionals and we put wildfires out for a living. So that was one of my key takeaways from that. All right, thank you guys for that. I really appreciate it. I will kick it back over to Sandy to follow up with our next question.
Yeah, and I think this is a great segue based on what you were dealing with and what we just learned. But how do you see our trade shows and conventions set up for the future? Will it be the same prior to COVID, or what are your anticipations moving forward after COVID? Ellen?
So I think this has been a really interesting time for everybody. We've all had to kind of take stock and take a look at how we do things. And every once in a while, it's time for reinvention, and COVID was another chance for reinvention. So I think a lot of organizers will look at their events and say, how can I make it feel safer while looking different, perhaps? Maybe it's not straight aisles of 10 by 10 booths anymore. Maybe it's a different sort of format that separates the booth in a different way, but also just gives your show a fresher feel. So I think there's going to be a lot of positives that will come out of this in terms of just a freshening up of events. I mean, the Grammys as an example, they've always been in the Staples Center. And they had to say, how do we do this in a COVID way and have most of it take place outdoors while performances were taking place indoors. So again, I think there's a lot of really creative people out there in our business, and they'll come up with some fantastic ideas of how to make it all look and feel better and safe as well.
Suzanne, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think, I think that there's, again, as you look at, I try and look at the bright side of things or the silver lining of things, if one could be found. And, I think for us, we're not the biggest kid on the block as far as convention centers go. So, I don't think there will be these mega events with 60,000 people crammed into one space in the very near future. And I'm okay with that because, that's because we're not the biggest kid on the block. I think, there's going to be some interesting ways that folks deal with capacity limitations. We're really pushing to mirror sort of how restaurants are doing it. So 50% to start and then kind of moving up. I think folks are going to, start figuring out ways that they can use technology better. The hybrid meetings are still going to happen. And I think that's good. It gets more people CE education. It gets more people involved in these organizations, much like Tommy was saying with the ECA lobbying. And I also think they're going to find new ways. Maybe it's rotating speakers in the short term. Maybe it's rotating speakers instead of attendees. Maybe it's, multiple rooms with folks having, seeing the same speaker, but in different rooms, that sort of thing. And I think we're also going to see, especially in California, because of the great weather that we have, that they're going to find new ways to use spaces. So a lot more outside spaces. I think we've all seen in our cities where restaurants are using outdoor spaces. In San Francisco, that's been a really big thing as we use parklets and things like that. So I think you're going to get more sort of use of those sort of different and spaces that maybe were overlooked before. So
great. Rick, would you like to add anything to that?
Sure. I think we're going to eventually get back to what we've been used to, but I think it's going to be an interesting path, and it's going to fall to the responsibility of our show producers and meeting planners first, because at the beginning, we're going to receive guidance from state health that gets channeled down to our county health and then to us. And then in many ways, we become the messenger, and then we begin working with each of you to figure out how are we going to make this happen. So I think there's going to be a phased approach. Demand is from all of the research, whether you're looking at SEER research or Freeman's research component or North Star, all of them are pretty consistent with where demand's going to be over the next few months and into next year. So demand is going to be there. And one of the things that we're going to have to do is work even more closely together than we ever have, because I agree with what Suzanne was saying, in that there's going to be different uses for different spaces, because there's likely going to be a distancing requirement, and an association may add some form of protocol over and above what may be required. Just because we say this is the minimum doesn't mean that that's what an association or producer may decide to do. So that's where we have to work together. Outside space is going to be used a great deal. All of those things are going to be phased in. But where I really think we're going to see change in the future is, I think once we get down the road a little bit further and we've begun to get used to some of this, the design of venues is going to become an element that has to be addressed. So public space is going to become even more important, because whether we want it or require it or not, attendees are going to want to feel a distance in common spaces. And we have a lot of venues in our particular region, not to mention across the country, that have small lobbies and small registration areas. And those areas are going to have to be used differently. I think we have to think about that. But I think the next big sort of reaction to all of this is likely going to come from our architects over the next decade or two, and it'll be a shift in design, even when we have renovations and expansions, not to mention any new venues that come up. You know, the new way of approaching this is through infection control, not just cleaning, not just distancing, not just scanning or you know, talking to people as they come in with questions. It's everything combined, and we'll have a minimum standard, but then every venue and every show will work together on establishing their protocol for infection control for the best protection of their people. And that's going to be important. So there's going to be a customized approach. And back to kind of an earlier topic, it's never been more important than right now to realize we're all together in this, regardless if we're a producer, a meeting planner, a venue, you know, a service contractor, a provider. Doesn't matter. We all have to find solutions, because it boils down to employees and staff, not just direct in all of our industry, but in our case, and in you know, every case of any sector venue out there, all of the support jobs from retail and restaurant and attraction, you know, they're watching to see what we're going to do in order for us to be able to host and to help our show producers and teams produce these great events, so that they can bring the economy back into all the local jurisdictions. So I think there's a lot of phasing yet to come, and it's going to require us to work closer together. And the days of that kind of us and them, when we get, you know, picky on things that really maybe don't matter that much, that we need to put those behind us and start focusing on the big picture of how are we going to improve the lives of the people in our industry, produce these shows so that they can get the revenue to do their advocacy and education, and then and our community version of that be able to improve the economy and get people back to work. So it's a big picture from my point of view.
Thank you. Yes, you're absolutely right. It's going to take a collaborative approach. From me as an organizer, I know, you know, representing an association, but working with Suzanne at Moscone, working with Freeman, my contractor, our registration vendor, and, you know, all of us aligning to understand the rules that the city imposes, the best way to set up something that meets within our budget. So definitely a collaborative approach. Thank you. And Mindy, final thoughts?
Yes, you know, I believe that we also need to learn from this experience. You know, 10 months ago, 12 months ago, our experience was very different than where we are today. We didn't think we'd be where we are today. I use Costco as a great example. When we first went to Costco 12 months ago, we were queued up behind large stanchions in the parking lot, and we were physically distanced, and they metered how many people went into the warehouse, and we ran for toilet paper and other supplies in great shortage. Fast forward to today, I walk through Costco and I feel like I'm in the trade show of the future. They're still sampling, and it's now contained and done differently. We're courteous and aware of our surroundings. The new products are still being, you know, highlighted and showcased, but look how quickly within a 10-month period of time, they went from panic to acceptance to, you know, just an ease of doing business. And I really feel that while we're waiting for news, waiting for us to get to that next hurdle, cross over to that next, milestone. If we just look at some of the industries that are weathering this time and plan accordingly, but be resilient enough to make the modifications along the way, without hesitation. Now we go into Costco and we greet our neighbors with our masks on, and it's a nice experience. And I feel like in short order, that's once we emerge from this time, we're going to be back kind of the Costco way. And I know many on this call who I've had this conversation with think I have stock in Costco, which I do not, but it's the ultimate retail trade show experience. So, we just got to learn from industries, restaurants, retail, and really assimilate and get back to business and learn from the processes that they've been through.
Great. Thank you, Mindy. And to follow up, with new venue and event design and the GBAC regulations, there obviously comes additional cost with that. So could each of you provide one or two examples of costs that you are making your associations aware of that they should budget for? We'll start with Ellen again.
Well, and I think this question came up in the chat. Somebody was asking about PPP, the protective equipment. So for us on the venue side, our expenses increased in the areas of HVAC, cleaning, et cetera. So the base, our fees will remain the same for the base services. If you need something that's above, or you desire something that's above the base service, then that would be something that you would pay for. But we would be responsible for providing our employees with the protective equipment they need, but you would need to be providing your attendees with whatever protective equipment they need should they not bring it themselves. Most people have a mask of preference at this point. We all have found the ones that work best for us, but should they not have one with them, then it would be the responsibility of the show organizer to provide that, as an example.
Thank you, Ellen. And Suzanne?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're seeing that again, we haven't gotten those requirements yet, but I think first aid and medical services are likely going to be something that folks are going to need to budget a little bit more for. In our particular building, we've always suggested that they have they be on site from the beginning of the contracted dates till the end, but we've only required it during event days. I think moving forward, whether that's a requirement or not, I think it will be best practice for folks to have medical services on from the time they start moving in until the time they move out, and really start seeing all their vendors and that sort of stuff as part of that process, and wanting to keep them safe and healthy as well.
Great. Thank you, Suzanne. And Rip?
Yeah, I think you're going to see more of a volume in ancillary services, not so much price increase, but you're going to see increased budget need because of doing the infection control, for one thing. And one of the areas that we're focusing on is a document that is, here's our responsibility, here's the producer's responsibility, and here's the attendee's responsibility. And so, and the attendee responsibility is very much about taking that responsibility not to come if you're sick, and to, wash your hands, all those general things that we're talking about, but also, meeting the rules of the association and the local health code. Whereas the promoter producer's responsibility is going to be to meet all applicable laws and to have appropriate infection control measures. And so those would be increased budget needs. But in terms of us increasing prices, I don't see buildings doing that. A lot of us have license agreements or lease agreements already out into the future that set base rent costs. Ancillaries change based upon the market and costs pretty much annually anyway. So I think you're going to just see increased costs because of increased need and volume on ancillary more than anything else.
Thank you, sir. And our friend Mindy, please, to wrap it up for us.
I think, prior to the pandemic, safety was, how safety plans were put into place, what responsibilities from a show perspective, from an event from a city, from a destination perspective. That was top of mind and really, being addressed. Now we just fold cleanliness into the whole safety and security dialogue. So when it comes to cleaning protocols, as Rip mentioned, the checklist, it's really a communication tool so that we understand who's covering what, but cleaning and safety is number one. I know it was touched briefly about the GBAC accreditation that we've all obtained. Those are measures that are gonna give the consumer, the attendee, confidence to return, confidence to fly, confidence to travel, confidence to be in our building, stay in our hotels, eat in our restaurants. So everything we do overall isn't going to be an added cost, but with added cleaning between sessions, cleaning overnight, what are the expectations? What are the needs by group, by event? Those are the things that are part of the discussion. And quite frankly, we view it as part of the guideline. It's part of what we discuss in the planning process. So everybody will be prepared.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody, for those very helpful insights. And I will pass it back over to Sandy once again.
Great. So has your facility implemented new technologies to support safer meetings? We'll start with Ellen.
New technologies. Well, we have a robust system here for Wi-Fi, internet connectivity, et cetera. We also have 5G. We host the Mobile World Congress on an annual basis. So they needed 5G, so they went crazy in our building. So we have those things available. We haven't built, some buildings have built out broadcast studios. We have not gone that route. We've decided we have our internal AV partner Encore has that available and can be set up anywhere. So we've decided that taking a room out of inventory wasn't the way we wanted to go. So that's our approach to it.
Suzanne?
Yeah, I think very similar to Ellen. We just went through a $500 million expansion. So, all our stuff is touchless. We have the hydration stations that you don't have to put your mouth down to, all those sorts of things. Our restrooms are all the touchless stuff. So we're grateful that we already had that stuff in process. And I think we're just going to find that that folks are using our technology more. So it's less of us adding it. We also have pretty robust Wi-Fi and internet and all the things that I don't really understand about internet. But so I think that magic will just be used more often is really, and just, I think also the adding customer service surrounding that will be the thing that we really add more so than the technology.
Great. Rep?
Part of what's happening, and I agree with Suzanne and Ellen both, the technology has been driving so much of what we do. And with our partner Smart City, who I know many of our venues have, we had increased bandwidth and fiber and all of the major things we needed to take care of shows. The COVID by itself is not going to drive advances in technology from my point of view. What it is going to drive is the way that we handle our technology and how we take care of our equipment and how we interact with our customers to do that. Customers are going to want to know that the phone set or the Wi-Fi modem or the cable, all of those things are clean, sanitized, and approached in a way with confidence, because ultimately what we have to do, whether it is housekeeping or technology or any other kind of ancillary service, what we collectively all have to do is drive consumer confidence. And early in this, as we get back to work, we're going to have to assure everyone that the equipment they're using has been wiped down and clean. Microphones are clean. The modems, anything that is a physical presence that we use to service a customer, all of those things have to go through these protocols, and our own teams have to be checked. And so I think it's a big collective effort on how we deliver the technology, not the advancements, because most of us are already pretty advanced in our technology and have technology funds that support that. So I would venture to say at least the venues I know in California are pretty technologically advanced already, but it will change with the consumer confidence of when we deliver something to the booth or to your office, that it's clean, ready to go, and that it's been handled properly, and that the team presenting it has been screened and are healthy.
Great. Any final thoughts, Mindy?
Yes, you know, we looked at this as an opportunity to, you know, what are some of the things that we want to do, that we keep doing, that we don't want to do any longer. And one of the things was handling cash. We handled such a small amount of cash. It was like the right time for us to get rid of cash. So as a building, we no longer accept cash for catering, for parking. We looked at a new updated enhancement to a point of sale system. So, I mean, as a global economy, everybody was going away from cash. It was the right time to just sever that. So that's kind of an example of something we wanted to do. And I think many of the other buildings are looking at those options. I think LA did it too, right, Ellen? And she's taking the Zoom head of mute. But you know, these are times where we get to say, what can we stop doing? You know, we added hand sanitizers, you know, all of us did. But we look at those as new sponsor locations. You know, now they're within eyesight. You know, people are going to really be looking and seeking them out more so than ever. So now we kind of put together a sponsorship package tied to hand sanitizers and water filling stations, you know, so it's really amplifying the things that the consumer, the attendee is going to really be driving. And this was a time to do that. Mobile studios is kind of our approach as well. Like, we'll take the studio and the streaming packages to you, but knowing that that could be an added cost. I know we've worked with our partners to come together with tiered pricing, so that we can start the conversation and customize it. So, you know, all of those have been top of mind, many of the conversations, but it's really important as we design meetings moving forward, as we emerge from this time, that we're ready and nimble to be responsive and work in partnership with everyone to make it happen.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mindy, and everybody else for your extrapolation on that. Much appreciated. Okay, so for the sake of time, we have 2 questions remaining, but I'm going to combine those. And this next one is the one that I was really interested about. So what events do you have in the pipeline, and how has projected attendance been affected? And then after that, we're going to ask for your closing thoughts. So if you could please talk about your pipeline of business, and then any closing thoughts you have, and then we will go to some audience Q&A. So let's start with Ellen, please.
So we do have a few events left on the books for summer. We're uncertain whether they will happen or not. And then, of course, the fall looks incredibly busy, hopefully. And you know, most of the people that we're talking to are anticipating their events to be anywhere from 40% down to 60% down, depending kind of on the industry that they're in and how international heavy they are. Those with the highest international attendance will see the most drop. So I think that, you know, part of what's interesting too is our government officials are scared of these mass gatherings. Well, these mass gatherings will not be so mass, at least for the near term future. They will be much smaller in terms of both the scope of the exhibit portion of it and the attendee portion of it. So, and we've seen that happening, like these shows that are in Orlando and other places that are open. They're not huge shows. They're not mega events with, you know, thousands upon thousands of people. So we're hopeful, and you know, my closing thoughts are kind of, we're taking an approach too. There are segments of businesses that are open, and we're looking to see if we can apply those to a temporary space for those things. For instance, a museum. Museums have opening guidelines. Can we have a temporary museum in the convention center? You know, we have schools that are open. Can we do educational programs in the center, or testing, those kinds of things? So we're looking to see if we can kind of work within the system and kind of bend the system a little bit.
Thank you, Ellen. All right, and Suzanne?
Yeah, we have some events in the fall, kind of the same as Ellen, anywhere from 40 to 60% of their attendance, and they honestly just don't know. I mean, they're surveying their members, but you know, surveying your members and asking if they want to come, and then their organization that they work for actually paying for them to come to a convention are two different things. Especially for some of the tech groups, we're really looking to see how they deal with allowing their staff to come to conferences. So that's what we're seeing. And then final thoughts are really just, you know, this is and we touched on it before. I think Rip touched on it. This is the time for us to come together as venue managers and association managers and all the various vendors and really collaborate and build those relationships. You know, it's easy to get into this is what your contract says and that sort of thing, but we're all just in it to try and make this to come back and bring some sort of events and normalcy back into our staff's lives, our communities' lives, and build budgets for our communities and get people back to work and doing what we all love. So now's the time to really come at it from a fresh perspective and make sure that we're working on those as a relationship. And you know, as a building, we can't take on all the budget responsibility. And I know as an event organizer, Sandy can't take on all the budget responsibility. We really have to find a way to work together to make sure that we're all successful in this. So that's my final thoughts.
Great, thanks. And just so everyone is aware, we only have 4 minutes left. So if we could have our final 2 panelists be aware of that and just be considerate of the remaining time. And we will go to you, Rip.
Sure, I would say ditto first to save time for the 2 of them, because holding them in high regard. I just think that what we're looking at is that the value of us coming together with panels like this to find best practices, protocols, and to communicate is what's going to improve the ability for us to provide safe reopenings for all of the attendees and all of the shows. And like the others, we hope we can get open with some shows in August, a couple that are left, and then we're full calendar after that. But what we need to do as an industry is continue to provide research on trends and demands, and you know, IAEE does that, IVM, all these organizations do that. We've got to continue to collaborate on advocacy at local and federal levels. You know, we're working on that in California. We've got the California Convention Center Coalition, IVM's region, got, you know, the Southwest IAEE group. We've got ECA that's helping, and so, you know, there's a lot of great effort. I'd say do not be shy. Reach out to any of us that are involved at any of those levels. I know Tommy will take your call day and night. He does ours, and you know, we need to do that, because the way we're going to get through this is to share. 2 heads are better than 1, 4 are better than 2, 8 are better than 4, etc. We're not alone. We all are suffering from financial difficulty, and we just need to find a way of working together and making sure that we persevere, because we're moving out of stabilization. We need to focus on recovery for everyone that we represent.
Awesome, thank you, Rip. And then finally, Mindy, some brief thoughts. And just so everyone knows, the questions that were submitted in the chat that we were not able to get to because of time, we will gather those and give them to our panelists, and we will follow up with our registered attendees. So we'll make sure that everybody's questions are addressed, so you can be rest assured of that. And Mindy, please take it home for us.
All right. You know, this is a resilient group. I am beyond impressed. I've seen all these names popping up, and it warms my heart because there are people from across the country on this call, and I miss you guys so much. And we are a tough and resilient group. We will continue to persevere. We will get through this crisis, and we will plan events together. And I know we're out of time, but let's just keep doing the hard work that we need to do, and gather again face to face, and let's get some business done.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that conclusion, Mindy. That was so well stated. We appreciate everybody's time. Tommy, Ellen, Rip, Suzanne, Mindy, you guys have been phenomenal. We are so appreciative for the valuable insights you provided. I know our members are going to be greatly enriched because of it. So thank you for joining us. Thank our attendees for making time out of your day to join us. We love that you were so enthusiastic about this topic. And as I mentioned, we will gather your questions. We'll do follow up with the panelists, and we'll make sure that everything that you asked is addressed so nobody feels like they didn't have their questions at the top of our mind. So thank you again.